evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to What's Up Caribbean. Tonight, I am honored to welcome a very important figure in the world of law on my show. Our guest tonight is attorney Irakurzban, whose book is the most widely used one-volume immigration source in the US. I am sure that you have all heard his name before, but allow me to give you more information about attorney Kurzban. Irakurzban, a civil rights and immigration lawyer, is a partner in the law firm of Kurzban, Teasley and Pratt, PA of Miami, where he shares its immigration department. Mr. Kurzban is a past national president and former general counsel of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and he's a fellow of the American Bar Association. He has litigated over 50 federal cases concerning the right of aliens, which he argued before the United States Supreme Court. Mr. Kurzban is an adjunct faculty member in Immigration and Nationality Law at the University of Miami School of Law. He is the author of Kurzban's Immigration Law Sourcebook. He has lectured and otherwise published extensively in the field of immigration law, including articles in the Harvard Law Review and Columbia University Press. Immigration is a crucial topic these days, and who better to clarify the truth behind everything we hear than Irakurzban. Tonight, I'm also privileged to have as my co-host Ms. Tessa Petit, the Executive Director of the Florida Immigrant Coalition. Ladies and gentlemen, you will learn a lot of stuff tonight. Stay tuned. I'm very, very happy to have you both on the set with me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa.
Thank you.
Mr. Kurzban, and welcome to What's Up Caribbean. So I am sure that you know this very smart lady, Tessa Petit.
I do.
And Tessa, I will ask you to introduce yourself a little bit to our viewers.
I am Tessa Petit. I serve as the Executive Director for the Florida Immigrant Coalition and Flick Votes and the Florida Immigrant PAC. Our focus is policy work that impact immigrant communities, and at the municipal level, the state level, and the federal level. And also on the political side, of course, we do some civic engagement, electoral work, and we encourage and support politicians who are immigration champions, because we do need those more than ever now.
Absolutely. So I had to reach out to her to help me address the correct immigration issues. And of course, we need two women to interview you.
I guess at my age, you do need two people.
You have so much to say. So we know a lot about you. You are a very good friend of the Haitian community. You've been fighting for us for a long time. But we would like to know a little bit more about you, your past. People say that you are Cuban. Other people say, no, he's not Cuban, he's from Israel. And other people think that you're from the Middle East. So tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, I think people think I'm Cuban because my former wife was Cuban.
Okay.
And maybe that's why. And she was quite well known in the Cuban community here. I am not from the Middle East. I'm not Israeli. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I guess that qualifies for something. There are a lot of Haitians in Brooklyn, as you know. And in fact, my father had a store that is now right in the middle of the Haitian community in Brooklyn for many years. My father was born in Romania. My mother was born in Brooklyn. My father had to leave his country when he was 12 years old because of anti-Semitism. He left on his own. His parents,
At 12.
at 12
How
years
did
old.
they let him travel at 12 years old?
Well, I think that's why when you see these children at the border, I really identify with that. I understand what's going on, which is they didn't want him to die in Romania because of anti-Semitism. And there was a lot of disruption at the time. There were a lot of what they call pogroms, where they went after Jewish people just because they were Jewish. And so they felt that it was safer for him to go to a family that they knew in Belgium. And he left on his own. They gave him enough to try and get there. But when he got to Belgium, the family didn't take him in. So my father wound up working in a button factory, because in those days children could work and worked in a button factory for a number of years until his brother came. They both then went to Montreal, Canada, and eventually came to the United States. So my family has a history of fleeing persecution. I understand it. I understood it in a very, visceral and personal way. And when I started representing people here in the Haitian community, one of the first things I did at the request of Father Jean-Just was to go visit a Haitian child, a 14-year-old girl who was put in West Palm Beach jail, and to try and get her out. And eventually we did.
This is when you started your love story with the Haitian community.
Yes, I would say that's, I think that's pretty accurate. I started at the request of the National Council of Churches and the Christian Community Service Agency, which was in the late 1970s. They had something called the Haitian Refugee Center here. Mm-hmm. I think people don't realize that the law and how we dealt with refugees was very different in the United States at the time. Before 1980, we didn't have a Refugee Act. All we had was something called the Convention and Protocol relating to the status of refugees. And so what did they do? When a boat of Haitians came in the 70s, they would call the Department of State and say, do you want us to let these people stay here or not? And of course, as more Haitian boats came, the dichotomy between how they treated Haitians and how they treated Cubans became very, very clearly discriminatory. Mm-hmm. So what happened in those days is, even though when the first boats came, they helped people in the way that they helped Cubans, but after a while, when they saw more people coming, they started to incarcerate them. And the interesting thing about the whole history of Haitian refugees is that as a result of the things they did to Haitians, incarceration, not giving them work authorizations, requiring them to go through mass hearings, as a result of those things, we created a whole body of law to help refugees. So the Haitian community can be very proud of the fact, for example, the first people ever to get work authorizations, employment authorizations, came as a result of a lawsuit we did called National Council of Churches versus Egan. Before that period, there was no such thing as an employment authorization if you were seeking asylum. They just let you stay here. You couldn't work legally, so either your choice was work illegally or starve while you were waiting to apply for asylum. So that's one of...
So you were leading this project or this movement?
We did a lot of this work ultimately through the Haitian Refugee Center, because in 1980 there was a group of Haitians here along with Father Jean-Just that said, we should have our own center. We should incorporate our own center. And I incorporated the Haitian Refugee Center, run by Haitian refugees, run by Father Jean-Just, run by members of the community here at the time, Haitians in the community. Some people like Rule Jean Bart for example, who came here as an organizer to help people in the Haitian community. Bernard Fils-Aimé, who came here to help. Jack Lieberman, who was here as well at the time, and a number of other people. Abel Simon, who I'm sure you all know. These were all people who helped to create the Haitian Refugee Center that we had for many years. And that center went on to fight on behalf of Haitian refugees. So we would take applications. We had some lawyers. I was kind of the supervisory lawyer at the time. And I wound up doing 13 separate class action lawsuits on behalf of Haitians at the time, Haitian refugees. We did 3 cases to the United States Supreme Court.
Yes.
And so there's a whole history behind it, but it's a very interesting history because it came from the ground up. It wasn't, in a way like, well, I would sit there and think of a lawsuit that I wanted to do. It didn't work like that. It really came from the needs of the Haitian community. And so when Haitians needed work authorizations, we sued to get work authorizations. When Haitians were detained, we sued on their behalf. When Haitians were put in these mass deportation hearings, like Trump is now threatening, we got an injunction to prevent that from happening. Because when Haitians were here in the late 70s and early 80s, the community was promised by different administrations that they were going to get rid of all the Haitians. And if it really wasn't for people like Father Jean Just, who I have always said is really the Martin Luther King of the Haitian community in many ways, and is in some ways underappreciated for what he did. There were demonstrations every day out in the streets of Miami. When we had a case in court, they would bring 300 Haitian refugees to sit in the courthouse. So what we did is we put pressure on the community by demonstrating, by acting politically, which was really the motivating force. The lawsuits, although we get a lot of credit for it, were really secondary to the political pressure that was put on by people like Father Jean Just and others who were out there demonstrating every day. And there are people in this community who know that whole history, and when I talk to older Haitian who have been here for many years in the early 80s, they know what it meant to fight for all of these things. It wasn't just texting each other. We went out on the street, and all of us were demonstrating at the time. So
that is fantastic. I'm happy that you shared this story with us, because a lot of us didn't know about it the way you described.
Well, you were too young.
Oh, I love hearing this. Woo! Repeat that again. What did you say? So it's sad that right now we still have to fight that hard for the Haitian community, for our community, Tessa and I. It is very sad, and we'll talk about it later on our show. You follow the situation not only here but also in Haiti. I know you know. Did you think that Haiti would be the way it is right now? What do you think of the situation in Haiti?
I have to say that I'm saddened, truly saddened by how bad things are in Haiti. On the other hand, I'm not entirely surprised.
Really?
And I'm not entirely surprised because I think, unfortunately, our government here has meddled in Haitian politics, as you know, for over a century, almost 2 centuries. And it's not surprising between the French and the U.S. That Haiti's economy and the situation in Haiti today is the result of what happened over all those years. You know, I tell people the story about how the United States Marines went into the National Bank of Haiti in 1915 and took out all the gold. And people don't believe it. They think it's, that couldn't have happened. But it did.
Yes.
And how the double debt of Haiti, indebted Haiti by the French French from 1824 until the U.S. then took over the debt and made it worse. So when I hear things like Haiti's a failed state, or as Trump always said, Haiti is a, quote, shithole country, it really irks me because they created it. I mean, in other words, the foreign powers who had interests, financial interests in Haiti, first in slavery. I mean, who ever heard, for example, of a government saying, even though we enslaved you,
you have to
pay us back
Yep.
for the debt of slavery. I mean, and that's what the French did in 1824 when they brought warships to Haiti. I mean, and so it's not that Haitians have no responsibility. Obviously, the Haitian people have a responsibility for their own situation. But every time a leader emerged in the country who was going to help the poorest people in the country, to lift up people from misery to poverty, as President Aristide said, the United States went after them because they couldn't control those people. And I think that's part of what happened. And so...
And do you have hope when you see the situation right now?
I think it's tough. I think there's going to be some major intervention. I think the Haitian people have to take responsibility for the situation, but I think they can't do that until the gangs are you know, in some way put down or end the fighting or negotiate a settlement or whatever it is. But I think the current situation is not one that helps the vast majority of Haitians. A lot of people are displaced. A lot of people are suffering from hunger and despair. And unfortunately, I think it's going to mean that either UN troops are going to go back to Haiti or the United States government is going to send troops, although I think they're unlikely to do that alone.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Right now, I would like to talk about your organization, the one you founded. When was that?
In 2006, a group of immigration lawyers got together and started something called Immigrants List PAC. Mm-hmm. And the idea was to begin long-term to elect people who were pro-immigration in the Congress. I think one of the problems, it's the same in some sense in foreign policy, that for many years, until they made it a culture war, immigration was bipartisan in the sense that they really didn't, there was some progressive movement, but that progressive movement began to end by 1996. And one of the responses to why we started Immigrants List PAC was the 1996 Act, which was called the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act. And that act did a number of horrible things in immigration. One of them was mandatory detention. And this was a program that, again, started with the Haitians in the late 90s.
Always us. I mean,
yeah.
There must be a reason.
Well, yeah, it's called discrimination and racism. In the late 1980s, in the late 1970s and early 80s, Reagan came into office and said, we will interdict people, we will incarcerate them, and we will expedite their removal from the United States. So that started the beginning of a different way of dealing with immigration, which is they're the enemy and we're going to stop them. And when he said interdiction, one could have thought he meant everybody, and he said it in a facially neutral way, but in fact, in 1979, 1980, and 1981, that's what they did to Haitians. And of course, they didn't do it to Cubans. In 1980, remember, we had the Mariel boat lift. The Mariel boat lift, so 127,000 people came to the United States. 2,000 or 3,000 of them were really bad apples. You know, they were obviously released from mental institutions, or they were released from prisons, and they came here and created some havoc. But the rest of the Cubans were released and allowed to remain in the United States and weren't detained. But the idea of detention started with the Cubans, but the only people they enforced it against as a practical matter who did not commit crimes were Haitians. And so what you had by 1980-81 is a program of incarceration for people who were seeking asylum, seeking freedom in the United States. And that started this process. By 1996, they decided to establish something called mandatory detention, because between 1980 and 1996, an entire network of prisons, what we call private prisons, they were either private prisons like we have now, GEO, and it was then, I think, Core Civic. Ronald Reagan, to help the chief funder of the Republican Party in Tennessee at the time, gave him the first private prison contracts because the company was about to go bankrupt. And that's what started this notion that what I call today the kind of immigration industrial complex. People in prisons, whether it's a city prison, a county prison, a state prison, federal prison, or a private prison like we have here in South Florida, the facility, the GEO facility in Broward County, that's a privately run prison. And that was a way of kind of creating this whole structure of prisons. By 1996, they made detention mandatory for certain categories of people. And by making it mandatory, they did something we've never had in the history of the United States, which is, even if you're not a flight risk, even if you're not a threat to anyone, you smoked marijuana and got convicted of possession of marijuana under this statute, not only are you incarcerated, but you can't be released until you either win your case or you get deported.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that tonight we have a superstar attorney in our show. Mr. Irakurzban is our guest, and he's explaining a lot of stuff to us.
They had something called the 3- and 10-year bar in the 1996 Act, which said if you overstay by a year and you leave, you can't come back for 10 years. For years before 1996, we had people who would say would be involved in home health care. I would get calls from U.S. senators. I would get calls from federal judges. I have somebody taking care of my mom or my dad who's elderly. I would like to do the right thing and make them a resident. And you could do that. In 1996, when this law changed and became effective on April 1st, 1997, you couldn't do that anymore. So when they talk about this illegal population in the United States, most of those people before 1996 would have become residents without any problem. So we started Immigrants List in 2006 because we decided It's not a matter of being a better lawyer. It's a matter of how we can change the law, and we can't change the law unless we have people who understand the things I've been saying and are pro-immigration and are willing to help immigrants. Immigrants List PAC started in 2006, as I said, and we started to assist different candidates who were pro-immigration. We've had a very good record. About 75% of the people we have supported have won their elections, and our goal is obviously to expand it every year, and we're going to continue to do that in the PAC. The PAC is designed to support a particular candidate. That's what PACs do. Mm-hmm. The other part of it is the C4.
Welcome back, everyone, to What's Up Caribbean. And tonight we are with Mr. Irakurzban, an immigration and human rights lawyer. We've spoken about how immigration has been politicized, and we have seen how the anti-immigrant sentiment has been used in the elections. It was used in 2016, where back then Trump came against the Mexicans. And this year, he came after the Haitians. And tell us a little bit about what's the impact that this anti-immigrant sentiment has had on immigrants in general, and also how a potential Trump win will impact our immigrant communities, including our Haitians.
Well, I think, first of all, why is Trump doing this? He's playing to the same 37, 38% of the people who are, what they call MAGA or Republicans or Trumpers, or many of whom hold very extreme views about race, about religion, and so forth. And it's like a dog whistle to them, and he keeps coming back to that, thinking, I believe, that he can win an election by getting all of those people out to vote. And I think that's why he's doing it. And I think he probably believes it, since he's been doing it now for years and years. I mean, it's no secret, for example, that Trump started his career with his father in New York City, renting places to live in a place called Trump City at the time, and that when people of color would come, they'd put a C on the application, and they would never rent apartments to him. So Trump has a long history of racism, and I think kind of this anti-immigrant attitude. The real issue is, what is the effect? And I think the effect is horrible. I mean, for example, when he entered his Muslim ban, the incidents against the Muslim community, violent incidents against the Muslim community, went up 97%. When he says things like, well, there are people on both sides who are good people in the Charlottesville,
very fine people
fighting the incidents of anti-Semitism skyrocketed in the United States and still remains quite high. When he has said the things he said about Chinese immigrants, for example, he kept referring to the COVID virus as the China virus. One person was sentenced to 75 years in jail for viciously attacking an elderly woman. The incidence of violence against Asian Americans skyrocketed in the United States. And, you know, we're seeing the same kind of thing even as late as yesterday, where at his rally in New York, which was really designed, again, as a dog whistle to emulate what the American First Nazi Party did in the 1930s when they held the same kind of event at Madison Square Garden. And what did it do? You know, they were talking about Puerto Ricans yesterday as coming from an island that's trash. So his comments repeatedly result in violence against people, real violence against people. And you know, the effect, the strategy obviously is how can they win? The amazing thing, and I find this amazing truly, and this is a program watched by Haitian Americans, that what he did in Springfield, Ohio, where they said they made up the whole story. Vance acknowledged that he made up the whole story, saying that Haitians eat cats and dogs, and that's what they were doing there. Created such violence that children couldn't go to school, that they had to close the schools, that a lot of the public facilities were closed. So they're immune, Trump and Vance and the whole crew of them doing this, they could care less. They kind of, you know, further the violence. They have to know when they do these things that they are creating violence. Just like he had to know on January 6th that his followers were going to attack the Capitol, they know when they go after these different ethnic groups, religious groups, racial groups, that the point is to create violence against them. So that certainly is the case, and I think his hope is that he can use that to springboard himself back in the White House. The effect of it will be catastrophic on America in every single way, and you know, I'm happy to discuss that, and certainly in immigration.
Do you really think that democracy could disappear in America?
Yes. Yes, I do. I mean, I think American institutions are pretty strong, but it is a little frightening when you get a 4-star general. And in my whole life in America, I've never heard generals even getting involved in politics. So the fact that they would even say that he's a fascist, something Democrats were afraid to say, interestingly enough. But he is a fascist. His tendencies are those of a fascist, to use racial minorities, religious minorities as a way of seizing power in the U.S. He has said, I'll be a dictator on day one. I believe everything that Trump says. People who listen to him, they say, oh, he's only kidding. I don't even understand how they can say that. Trump said, Haiti's a shithole country. And what did he do after that? He tried to end TPS. And if it wasn't for our lawsuit, he would have ended TPS for Haitians. He then ended, as a way of really punishing the Haitian community, ending the H-2A, the agricultural program for farm workers against Haiti. He singled out Haiti and ended it for Haiti. He singled out the H-2B, the temporary worker program, and ended it for Haitians. And the Biden administration brought all those programs back. So when people say, oh, they're both the same on immigration, no, they're not the same on immigration. Trump has said already he will end most of the TPS programs. They have already said in Project 2025 what they would do. And if anybody believes this notion that Trump has nothing to do with 2025, all you need to do is look at the people who wrote it. All of them, or almost all of them, were in the last administration for Trump. Certainly the immigration people were.
Definitely.
People like Gene Hamilton and Cuccinelli and Stephen Miller, they were all part of the and they were all coming back on immigration.
Your book is used as a reference by all lawyers and people who need to understand the immigration laws in the state. But with these laws changing with the different governments, does the information included in your book require regular updates?
When I started the book, it was this small, so people can, and it's now 2 volumes.
It's a Bible now.
It's 3,000 pages. And yes, it's changed. Of course, when Trump came in, things changed dramatically. And then when Biden came in, they changed back, I think, for the better for immigrants. Who
So
knows
you keep
what'll-
updating the book all the time.
and the book is updated every 2 years, so there's a new volume every 2 years. In fact, people who have old volumes, I tell them they're committing malpractice, because the law does change in some subtle ways and in some major ways, not by Congress, because Congress is passing very few immigration laws since they've now made it a cultural war issue. Since '96, it's really become a cultural war issue. That's why we have so many problems with immigration. I mean, we have the same volume of visas that we issue today that we had 35 years ago.
Really?
So
How come?
when you hear these people like Trump and others, oh, you should wait online, or you should be out of the United States. I think most people watching your show don't realize that if you are from Mexico and you want to bring your brother into the United States, they have to wait 25 years. If you are from any country in the world, other countries, and you want to bring your brother or sister into the United States, you have to wait about 15 to 18 years. If you are an Indian high-skilled person working for Amazon, or working for one of the computer companies, or working for Elon Musk's company, even though he talks about getting rid of immigrants, those people from India have to wait right now 12 to 15 years to become residents. So, the system is, they always say, oh, the system's totally broken. Yes, the system is totally broken. We don't have enough visas to accommodate people. When you talk about refugee admissions and asylum, we don't have enough people to do that because it's become a culture war issue.
As an immigrant attorney, are you satisfied with the Biden's administration immigration policy?
I think when we're talking about the border, I think the Democrats fell into Trump's trap. That is, instead of responding and saying, yes, we have 2 million people coming into the United States. Oh, by the way, we've always had 1 million coming in. People don't know that. Every year we've had 1.5 million people come into the United States. Some legally, some not legally. And why? Because guess what? We would not have food in the United States. They're doing the agriculture for America. They're doing the milk production for America. They're doing the services. They're taking care of your elderly family members in the United States. It's time Americans understood the enormous contributions that immigrants make in this country every day. Now, my gripe with the Biden administration, like many Democratic administrations, is that they keep backing away. In other words, they get attacked. Oh, we're letting in too many people. Oh, they point to 20 people who've committed horrible, terrible crimes. Well, everybody knows who studies this that crime rates in immigrant communities are much lower than they are in American communities.
Absolutely.
So you can always point to some bad apple somewhere who's done something horrible, like Trump, who is accused and is found to have raped a woman. Okay, so does that mean that everybody who's a Republican has raped a woman? No, obviously not. But the point is, you can always point to a bad apple, and they use that as the example, when in fact, when you look at statistics, and let me just give you two. The Congressional Budget Office in February of this year said all those people coming across the border who Trump calls rapists and murderers and drug dealers and everything else, they will contribute to our economy in the next decade $7 trillion. 7 trillion, not million, not billion, $7 trillion. They will reduce the debt in America by almost $1 trillion. You know what that means? That means that they can pay for my Social Security. That means they can pay for my Medicare. Okay, so the reality is that the Democrats have never made the case as to why immigrants are good for America. As soon as they back up and as soon as they're threatened by people like Trump and this anti-immigrant crowd that has existed for years and years in America, And now they're, of course, with Trump as their champion, they're all coming out from under the rocks and under the woodwork. But the fact is the Democrats should say, yes, we have to have control of the border. Of course you have to have control of the border. Nobody disagrees with that. You have to have some control. But what does that control mean, and how do you do it? And I think after saying, yes, we have to have control of the border, they should be articulating why immigrants are good for America. Because there's lots of ways of handling the border. One is distribute the people through the United States. We have lots of places in America, okay, like the city, the little town in Ohio.
Ohio, that's what I was about to say.
Right? And there are many, many examples like that where immigrants contribute to the economic lives of these towns and cities, many of which would otherwise be dying or dead. And so the real issue is how we distribute people. How do we use the resources that we have to take people to Springfield, Ohio, to take people to other cities where they will contribute to Americans, not just do like our governor here, Mr. DeSantis, and the governor in Texas, just drive them in the middle of the night to big cities and just dump them off, which is what they did. You know, when people told me, oh, they're taking them to big cities, I said, well, it's great that they're getting them away from the border. But they did it in, as they both always do, in a very mean-spirited, nasty political way, which is just take them by bus and in the middle of the night, just drop them off somewhere, instead of saying to Chicago, we have, 100 people, can you handle them? Or saying to some other small town, can you take these people and redistribute them? That's what we do with refugees who we admit to the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight is Mr. Irakurzban, an expert on immigration laws. And we also have Madame Tessa Petit as my co-host.
I've heard people tell me, oh, they can't do this mass deportation. It's never going to happen. They can't denaturalize naturalized citizens. This cannot happen. They cannot get rid of birthright citizenship. There's a lot of immigrants out there who still think that even though it is written in Project 2025, that it is not doable.
I just gave a talk to about 80 lawyers, immigration lawyers, about this, and I want to talk about birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship in the United States is based on one Supreme Court case from the 1890s. It's not based on anything else. It's based on an interpretation by the United States Supreme Court that the 14th Amendment applies to immigrants. Now, if you think this court won't reverse one decision, look at Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. So Trump has already said they're going to go after birthright citizenship. What they're going to do is they're going to pick up American citizens, children of parents who are illegal, to test it. That's what they're going to do. And when they do that, then somebody's going to sue them, and it's going to wind its way up to the Supreme Court. And what this Supreme Court will do, who knows? But they certainly have a proclivity to do things that are political. The majority of the 6 justices on the Supreme Court have a particular political ideology based on the Federalist Society's kind of roadmap about what to do. And I think it's clearly in the realm of possibility that they could overturn the case called Wong Kim Ark, even though I think the 14th Amendment is pretty clear that it does apply to immigrants. But there's always been a fight about this issue. Does it apply to immigrants or not? If it doesn't apply to immigrants, then they can pick up children born in the United States of undocumented parents, because they're going to say they're not considered citizens of the United States. So when people tell you, oh, this is all theoretical, they just wrote it on a piece of paper, no. They have a very concrete plan of how to do that. That's number one. Number two, there's no question at all that they will begin to round up people. Absolutely. Now, how many people they can round up? First, they're going to start with people who have final orders of deportation. Who has final orders of deportation? People have temporary protected status. Many of them have final orders. Not all of them, but many of them have final orders of deportation. So all they have to do is take away temporary protected status and go and grab those people and deport them. So this is not a matter of do you keep TPS or don't you keep TPS, and if you don't have TPS, you still stay here. No, it doesn't work like that. If you have a final order of deportation and you no longer have TPS, you're gone. They can pick you up. And they're not going to start with the criminals. They're not, even though they keep saying that, we're going to start with the criminals and we're going to do that, they're going to do what they always do, which is the easy picking. The people who are the easiest to pick are people who they know have a final order of deportation, know where they live, and they'll pick them up. And they'll create enough havoc, enough anguish in the community to be very, very disruptive. Now, can he deport 10 million people? No, I don't think so, because they don't have the internal resources to do it. But they can deport 1 million people a year. Probably, if they wanted to, easily, because many of those people already have final orders. Now they have protection. Again, thanks to the Biden administration, many people from many different countries, whether it's Cameroon or Nepal or Haiti or Venezuela, the Venezuelans here think they're safe and they think they're like the Cubans. They're not. Many people from Venezuela, if they have a final order of deportation, or even if they don't, if they take away TPS, they're overstays. They're subject to deportation. They're subject to being deported in the United States and from the United States if they chose to do that. And he said very clearly that's what he's going to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irakurzban.
Thank you.
I think this was a very important show. Thank you, Tessa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me on and asking good questions, tough questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week, same time.